Welcome back to another True Crime. Welcome back to another True Crime Monday. I'm your host, William Rail, and we are going to get right back into discussing further details concerning the Crowley family homicide. That's what this is. It was triple homicide, as I also call it, murder of the gray state. There's a lot of strange coincidences when it comes to how this case was handled. All right, I'm going to show you guys the evidence. We're going to go over their finances. We're going to go and cover, if we have time, we'll cover the playlist. But finances is going to take up a good portion of the time here, as will the other crime scene details when it comes to evidence and all this. But there's a lot of things here that they don't add up. I've been saying this for years. They don't add up with this case at all. And there's a reason he was murdered, so was his family. And I believe it was to send a message. I do believe there was some kind of a message there, whether it be, don't make this movie he's making. Don't talk about this stuff. I'm not saying he was killed by any, for like a government hit or anything like this. I'm not saying that necessarily. There is room to suggest it's definitely a possibility. Was he over the human trafficking that was going on in Fort Hood? Was that something that was being discussed when he was discussing all of these things with the anti-human trafficking organization? Now, there's some details I just need to still further sniff out, I guess. I need to kind of figure out what they mean. I'm not going to give a whole lot into this because this case is getting pretty dark. I've actually started really keeping myself very shut in about it. But I'm getting to a point where I can actually I think I can start discussing it again. But yeah, it's a disturbing case. So for those that haven't followed this case, this is something I highly suggest you guys do. Especially, hey, how's it going, Rick? Especially if you're looking at what's going on globally. First off, for those that haven't seen the trailer, Gray State, watch it. You'll see that it's a very disturbing trailer. It would have been a really good movie. It would have been a really great TV series, whatever you could get it into. But, that being said, it didn't make it. The real question is why? Why was this blocked in this certain specific way, where certain groups popping up throughout this? Why are certain themes of people that look into this stuff? Why do these same things pop up with this guy too? Now, you guys can, whoever wants to go and call me a conspiracy theorist or things like this, I'm just presenting the facts here. There will be some speculation, but overall, this is just facts. You can't argue with the evidence. We've got it. You can't argue with the tests that were done on the evidence. We've got those too. You can't go and argue with any of the connections, for instance, whose DNA was on what. You can't argue with that. You can't argue with the numbers here of how much of the population this DNA matches. These are solid numbers, they're facts. You can't cover it up. When you get into the finances, very, very strange occurrences occurred. This took me a long time to go over the finances. That's why we're going to do this first. I'm still going over the cell phone details. There's a lot of issues I'm having with it. But pinpoint exact locations, or at least general areas where texts and calls were sent from, or rather where they were received. So where the ping was for the phones. So we can get some details there and what's nearby, why this is relevant. Okay. Especially when you're looking at the time frames, why these things actually matter here. Okay, so let's look at the first part. The total monthly income. So you can see there's a few different accounts here. I want to make sure you guys can see it all. This is true, Rick. Rick mentioned that the more you dig into this case, the more a darkness sticks to you. 100%. That's 100% accurate right there. This case, this is one that'll get you wanting to look into other cases. You find this one odd, look at 9/11. You find this one odd, go look at go look at the Schneider case. There's another weird one. You find that odd, look at what Schneider talked about. You find that odd, look at what David Crowley showed off in his Gray State trailer. This case, it not only does it have a darkness that really sticks to you, it really piques the curiosity. If it doesn't pique somebody's curiosity, I have to question why. This should be something that's concern for everybody. All these things affect us, right? Now this case itself may not affect you directly, right? But it's indirect. Money has to be pushed to the case, right? Who pays for that? That comes off of you guys. Comes off of anybody that's in the States. They have to pay for it. That their tax dollars go right to it. Maybe not directly. If you're not in that state, maybe it doesn't. But if there's federal funding, well, federal funding, well, they get that from taxes from us anyways. So no matter what, it does affect you. But first off, we want to look at a few things here. We have Hothead Productions LLC. They had a checking and savings. That was David Crowley and his friend Mitch. His name was. This was Mitch Heil. This was their business. It was a movie making business. Now, Hothead was before Danny August Mason got involved. It's before any of these other named players, people, suspects, in my opinion, were involved. Their friendship, these two guys were like best friends. And then this all got in the way. It gummed it up. Was it the movie or was it the people? Was it the mission? Who knows? But you can see here, there's two different types of Hothead Productions here. You have the singular word Hothead, and you have the two different words, Hot Head, both LLCs. David had access to these. We got the bank statements. So we can see Hothead, singular word, they pretty much went to no money real quick. What I do believe happened, so we got to see these were still around at the same time. Why does this have so much more money? We've gone over the details, so what is this? Well, the great thing here is I can go over the deposits. And like I said, you can follow David's checking, David's savings. You can look at all this. You can cross-reference these things. Okay? We got to see in that first week of July, there was a $9,933 deposit. Where'd that money come from? What I do believe happened here, this part here, this hot head, the two different words, I believe this was David's project. He wanted to continue to do the money making, or the movie making, but he didn't want to do it with Mitch. He was doing his own thing here. This is literally his own thing. Okay? Now, the other thing to go and also notate, you get to see this $9,933. You see that also pop up over here in David's checking. We know during this time, David was working for some other people, and he was pulling some money. Okay. So once again, we'll take a look here. Now we're not seeing that 2 cents come off, which is a little interesting here. But we do see the $9,933, that pulls off, but the 2 cents does not. It's a little interesting. The little 2 cents, what is that about? Now, it may not mean much. It could just be a banking error. It could be a number of different things. However, we know David, this is most likely what David is, more than likely at least, what he's using to fund himself. This is his production company. Well, this is him and Mitch. We got to see this one literally went negative. Okay, this is a closed out account. Except the weird part, it went down to nothing in it, to something being spent here. And over in November of 2014. Okay, this is where the weirdness comes in, because then there's money put back in, and then at the end of that month, money taken out. Okay, a little peculiar in my opinion. So, what caused this? Now, this is minor stuff, okay? Because the police wanted you to believe that David was going on this massive spending spree, right? He was spending and spending and spending, and that they were dirt poor, broke, all this. Not true. They had money. Okay. They also had money in the Crowley payable and death account, or payable and death account, which is what his father has, right? Kids all were able to touch it. Started off with almost $500,000 in there. There's a point where it jumps right up to a little over that, and then it drops down $500,000. Okay, and it starts dropping and things like this. It doesn't do so well. Even drops down to the 10,000 mark. Why is that? Again, these are things that police, they want you to believe that David Crowley, once again, dirt poor, had nothing to his name, just spending like crazy. You can't see that payable on death account stuff touching David's stuff. None of it does. That's what I want to show here, okay? So we're going to look here, right? Let's look at the big jump here. We see a jump here, okay? That location, we see a jump. Are we going to be able to explain this? As we know, it's not, well, this is a jump in, a jump up. So let's see, we see a jump down here. Okay, so we don't see $500,000 popping up anywhere along here. So it didn't go here. Okay, so there's deposits. We see $272,000 was deposited. We see $150,000 was deposited. You can see all these different things here. But the big thing here is none of this went to David. Let's go through withdrawals. Where do we see any big number like that popping up? The answer is you don't. You don't see this pop up anywhere. You see this $500,000 that pops up. We know that it was on the withdrawal slip. It almost looked like David's signature. It wasn't David. David has really messy handwriting. This is much nicer, much cleaner. You could argue maybe Kamel, but no. Nope. Because we've got access to her handwriting too. If we've got access to handwriting, that should tell you right there, we're going to be able to identify these things. Now, is it possible, right? We can go and put on a tinfoil hat. This is where the real conspiracy theory comes in. And it's not one I subscribe to. What if David decided to write really nice that day? What if Kamel decided to write really nice that day? I've heard these. I've literally heard these theories. They don't add up. They wanted nothing to do with the others, with David's family, or with Kamel's family in the end. They saw both sides as just kind of not their vibe. We've literally got texts, we've got journal entries, we've got phone records. We can see David Crowley, Kamel Crowley, and Rania Crowley were all separating from the Crowley side and from the alum side. With the alum side, it was more, they didn't agree. Well, David and Kamel didn't agree with the way that Kamel's father was handling things with her mother's cancer. With David's side, he saw it as like they were different. We're not even talking about his mother. We're talking about his father, his brother. His sister was already distant. But she lashed out against Kamel and David, trying to make him feel bad. When really, Dan Jr. was, from what we've been able to see here, there was some shadiness going on with that guy. As for what, I can't even tell you directly what's true and what's not. But I can show you here, the counts don't add up. Once again, look at the money. Doesn't add up. Oh, sorry, got a little nasty cough still. Really messing me up, but we see that there's some problems going on with the payable death account, and we know that David's stuff was more or less secure. You can see the hot head, the two separate words. We got to see that was sinking. But we're looking in October. It starts to really sink. Okay. You could argue September, October. And what was happening in September, October? Well, September and October, that's when David was literally, he's already come to terms. He's already talked to his lawyer. They'd already talked to movie producers. They were going to get this movie going. This held David back. He had to throw a lot of money at this just to get it going. That's what happened here. And who stalled him out there? Danny August Mason. Okay? So we see some inconsistencies there. So, financially, that adds up. You can go and cross-reference all this stuff. You can cross-reference all of it with all the details we've got. Okay, let's go over the next part. Let's go over bold information. Actually, we're going to go over inventory first. I got you guys for another half an hour or so. All right, so this handgun that was used, Springfield XD40, found in the living room. Nuclear DNA, the DNA was tested on, the latent prints were tested on, the firearms were tested on. It's not a document, so that's not tested. Now we see David had his DNA on it, but so did Rania. Well, that's weird. Well, if David's DNA is on it, that can tie to Rania, right? Typically. But shouldn't Kamel's be there too if Rania's is on there? Not necessarily. But we know David's, with one parent, you can find that on some of their DNA because, well, they're child, right? But not have parts of Kamel. So this is a little interesting here. So now, if you look at this, there's 293,560 people as of 2015. That's going to be 0.004% of the total 2015 population. Now you got to go in. There's a lot of numbers you can run, but you're getting down to, arguably, you could probably get this down to just a mere couple hundred. If you start breaking it down further and further and further and further and further, which we could, but we'd have to actually know all the variables as to how we could get it down. We could actually get this number down very, very low, but we got to know these variables, right? I don't know all the variables to look at to get it down that low. I'm still learning how to do that, to really track down those variables, but you can. I know it's possible, but just mathematically, that's what it means right there. Okay, is they cannot exclude. This is what the medical examiner's reports and all the testing had found. They cannot exclude 0.004% of the 2000 or of the population. Now, if they're talking general area, that's going to come down to just a few people, but they're not. So they're talking about the global population, which means there's almost 300,000 people, just under 300,000 people that they can't exclude. Okay? This is where you start getting into genetics and, migration patterns and things like this. Families moving for whatever reasons. You see families spread, genetics spread, right? Okay, well, that's a little weird. But okay. Well, then we find the handgun magazine. Okay. In the living room. They did latent prints, nuclear DNA. All they could do is you can't do a firearms test on it, right? Where do they find? David, Kamel, Rania, and other. Now they're saying much larger population here. They cannot exclude 0.05% of the 2015 global population, which comes out to 3,669,500 people. It becomes a little harder to go and get this number down to the hundreds on just this alone. But you can cross-reference that number, the findings there, with the 0.004% chance, or global population. Then you can see who still pops up. Because now you have Kamel that's in there too, which means this could be somebody that was tied in with her family, potentially. You could see this is something that tied in with David's family. But now there's other. Could this be somebody that maybe they are, distant, like very, very distant to the family? Now, I want to go and bring this up, okay? That's where things are going to get a little tricky here. Let's take this biblical. Now, did all life, and I don't honestly have this answer, but I've got a very good idea about this, I would say. Did all human life, start in the Garden of Eden with just Adam and Eve? I want you guys to sit there and think about that for a second. Is that where all life started? Or is that just where a certain bloodline started? Okay? All right, I give you guys a little time there. Now, let's look at this from this scientific perspective here. They found signs of life, origins, if you will, in Africa. They found them in the Middle East. We found them near Asia. We found them all over the place. Points of origin, right, for human life. Okay? Follow me here? Now, if we just went off of just, Adam and Eve started it all, it's a lot of children, even hundreds of years, right? Now you got to look at genetic spread. You got to look at aging, maturing. You got all sorts of things you have to look at. You break down the science. It's interesting. But I firmly believe, yes, these points of origin, I do believe that there was other people. I do. I'm not saying the Bible's wrong. By any means, definitely, it is right. 100%. You'll never see me ever, you're not going to see me go against that. Okay? Now, I don't want to go too far into that because this doesn't really have much to do with it, but it does go into migration and genetic spread. Okay? Then you also have the flood. We're going to keep fast forwarding, right? And we're showing genetic spread. There's different stories about the flood and different survival stories. If you follow the Bible, you have Noah's Ark and his bloodline, tied directly to Adam's. So Adam's bloodline is still going. A good portion of that area was wiped out. Go and check out any other origin story, any other flood story around the world. Similar things happen. There was even in some cases where we got to see geological evidence to actually show that what happened. You had people that literally, we're talking mass amounts of people fleeing onto mountainsides, the mountaintops, to survive it. And they did. You had to see the settlements. What happened then? Lots of death happened, but you also had a lot of genetic spread. Okay? And then that came down, condensed the population. Other populations commingled because they wanted to spread out. They wanted more land, or they wanted to go to a different area. They wanted to trade. Genetic spread. Okay? This happens. This is just basic science here. Okay? So you've got all this genetic spread happening, right? So now let's fast forward it, right? Is there a common origin point between David and his killer? This suggests it's a possibility. They could be related. Now, did Rania do this? No. Did David do this? No, I can prove that without even sweating at all. There's a lot of things that prove he didn't. I'm just going to do that right now so you guys got that on record here. Excuse me. David did not do this. Fungus already shuts that down. Oh, I didn't have the data put on here yet. Dang. But I have it here. So, bold exit, left posterior bone. I'll show you guys a skull. Not his skull, but left posterior bone. Let's find the posterior bone. Hang on 1 second. Assumed right to left. Okay. Now that's just assumed. It's indeterminate. We don't know for sure, but we know it went up the left posterior bone. Okay. Which doesn't make any sense. But let's continue. We have more to go and cover on this. Okay. Now we got to see no drugs. But yet that's what the police are saying. This is a guy on drugs or an alcohol. No, negative, and no drugs at all present. In his spleen, he had N-propanol and decomposition peaks were present. That makes sense, which is going to tie in with the spleen having ethanol in there. Okay? Decomposition. They even checked Camille. She was positive for salicylate, which is aspirin. Same thing. Now, the other part you got to look at is how much ethanol was in there. She had significantly more in her, which means she was, that's part of the reason you can always say that she was actually, she was killed last. Rania was killed first. You can look at that. At least as of right now, I can't run the numbers in my head. Oh, excuse me. Well enough to actually be able to go and actually tell you for sure without a doubt, just based on that alone. But based on size, I wouldn't be able to run that. I'll just off the top of my head, I couldn't. But we're not going to do the math on that. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to explain some things. But we do know that yes, David had less than Kamel. He's 10 inches shorter, which means he was decomping longer. Okay. And then you have Rania, who is even smaller than both of them, and she is significantly less. Okay. Let's go read this real quick. Normal is going to be under 0.8. That's normal levels, which means they were leaking, with Rania leaking significantly, which once again, decomp. Okay. Then, so now if Kamel was, this already shows that she was killed later. Then you have to look at everything else about him. Kamel was still protuberant, which means her belly was still had the gases there, while David's and Rania's did not. They were also going through mummification in their left hand, with Rania actually going through even more mummification. Once again, sizes, there's another thing you can discuss. Right? So this alone already proves that David didn't do it. If the only one he could have possibly killed based on this would have been Rania. But I would still say no. Because she was killed by right to left, leftward, downward, backward. Okay? One bullet. Parietal scalp, and post-auricular temporal bone. And I will be on break for just a second. I need to take a quick break. Back in just a moment. All right, so there's that. Then we got other things to go and look at here. For one, oops, we have to look at mold growth. You can see, oops, okay, we're going to look at the liver here. 720 grams for David, 445 for Kamel, and 190 grams for Rania. Now, what do we see in common here? We see post-mortem mold growth on both just David and Rania. Okay? You can start, like I said, you start looking at this, and you're seeing some strange things here. Okay? None of this makes sense. Okay? I want you guys to see that here. Kamel wasn't reported on. And what did they label David as for all this? They labeled him as abusive, and that she was a victim here of David, and that his daughter was a victim of David as well. That's not possible. Not possible. Now, let's go up a little bit farther. Okay, we're going to go on